Hello.
Hey.
Good evening. This is Biweeklycast. This is episode number 30, and these are hosts. This is me, Dima Malenko.
I'm Slava Rudnitsky, and today we would like to discuss a topic, but before we do, there is a follow-up.
Yes, I kind of felt bad that in a number of recent episodes we didn't have follow-ups, and I felt like I'm not doing my job there. So I have a little bit of follow-up. This time I was listening to our, of course, naturally, I was editing our last episode, so I was listening to it, and I knew that I wanted to do it a justice and pronounce the name of the city where Vita attended the Tony Robbins training correctly. I tried my best, but I think listening to the recording, I probably didn't do it a justice. I will try once again. So it's not, when you say Birmingham, it's Birmingham. That's my best impression of this, of the name of the city. So it's not Birmingham or something or anything like that. It's Birmingham.
Birmingham it is. Yep.
Right.
And I was surprised to see Bother might have corner in the notes.
Right. We already had. I wanted to put it in the follow-ups, but I thought this is. Well, technically, we can consider this a follow-up to 20 episodes back when we discussed frequency illusion or Baader-Meinhof syndrome. And I swear to God, in the last couple of weeks, I was listening to a whole bunch of different podcasts, and in every other one they were using word illustrious, which I think I never heard before, but here, in the last couple of weeks, it was literally in every other podcast episode that I listened to. I don't know what's happened and what's going on, but I like this word. I want to use it, but I was surprised by how many other people started using it as well.
So, Baader-Meinhof corner it is.
All right.
Shall we move to the topic?
Yes. And topic, I was very intrigued when I read the name of the theme for the episode, which
and
is...
then you read the notes and
co-creation.
stopped being intrigued.
No. I'm still super intrigued, and I would love to talk about this.
So, little backstory. I'd like to talk to you about co-creation in a team of competent and creative people, and the way this process could be managed, arranged, and should work at the first place. Mm-hmm. The backstory here is that about 2 weeks ago now, we launched a Learning and Development Mastery course with People First Club, on the community, and Savvy. And this is a course I've been thinking about for years. And in order to implement it, we got together a team of 6 trainers. And it was a real challenge to put together the program. We struggled for about a month and a half just on the planning stage and architecture and descriptions. We've redescribed it in 2 different working groups, and then, it's been challenging. And I realized that it's a bit different from day-to-day management. When I manage people in different projects, I approached it differently. And I started thinking what went in so unique way that I decided to change my approach. Because, I'm kind of old and experienced by now, and it's hard for me to change my management style. And here, it just happened intuitively. So I wanted to reflect with you and look at the topic maybe from the broader perspective, and see what are the tools and instruments on getting a bunch of creative people together and making something happen.
Yeah, let's dive right in. But before that, I have a couple of clarifying questions. One is a serious, the other one is not. You said you launched L&D mastery course. Is it the mastery course? Is it something special is it kind of special kind of course, or is it just the name of the course?
It's the name of our partners, People First Club. They have two types of educational products. Some of the basics, like basics of recruitment, basics of something. And when the target audience are senior professionals in some domain, they do mastery courses, like recruitment mastery, sourcing mastery, something else. And this is L&D mastery, like probably highlighting that it's not designed to give you the basics.
All right, so that's maybe a little bit similar to what we do with Biweekly Bites, where we say it's one step beyond obvious or something along those lines. And then half serious question was that you said there was created, or not this course was created, but in general, how to approach doing something with competent and creative people. I guess that means that we might also look how to do stuff with incompetent creative people, but with competent but not creative, and not creative and not competent people as well. But maybe not this time.
I'll just ignore the question because
because it was not a serious question, of course.
So moving up, I decided that we should discuss two terms before we jump into the discussion. The first one is the collective creativity. Basically, it's an approach when creative activity happens from the collaboration of many individuals. And you could probably think of some brainstorming activities or any other kind of collaborations as type of collective creativity. But here I would like to push it a little further and say that this is something longer term, and where people would have to not only share their ideas, but also implement them together as a bunch, as a team. And the other word is synergy, which I think we discussed back in season 1 some time ago, years ago.
Yeah, it's very possible. And maybe even more than once.
It's kind of a provocation, because I think that synergy is a buzzword. Like, it's been used by coaches and managers quite frequently. Basically, it means that when a group gets together, they create something that they wouldn't be able to do just by themselves. And the sum effort of their work is multiplied, not just added. And this is something I felt when I saw the backlog, the curriculum of the course. I thought, this is something I wouldn't be able to do myself. But is it synergy or not? I think we will be able to answer by the end of the episode.
Yeah, we'll try. I have one more question about the definition. So if we circle back to collective creativity, where we say that this is kind of creative activity where multiple individuals engaged and kind of produce something as a whole rather than them being individuals, do we also want to define what creativity or creative means, or what we would imply in this context? Are we looking at a specific type of activity or something else?
In simple words, I would say it's making something that hasn't existed before, not just repeating, replicating, or analyzing existing things, but making things happen when they have never existed. And on the nerdy terminology, I think the word synthesis would be synthesizing new information and content from the information you know. Would be probably the best way to explain creativity.
Okay. Yes, it sounds fair.
Question to you first. Do you think you have engaged in highly creative projects, like when people would like to collaborate, to contribute a lot, and everybody has very different opinions? I'm sure that pretty much every software development project feels like this, but is not really creative.
Yes, yeah, you're right. Almost every project feels like that. I would still consider them to be creative, because most of the time this would happen well, I'm saying most of the time, and now I feel like I need to correct myself. I think at least two modes of how this could happen would be in a maybe true creative way, the way you describe, kind of matching your definition, where we set out to do something that did not exist. So there is a problem we want to solve, and at times that would be problem that was never solved before, kind of solved before as a whole. That would be one thing, but then there can be another mode where the problem is something that was already solved maybe a million times, but we are so bored of those traditional ways of solving it, so we try to find something creative, and people would also bring their best opinions about how to do that.
Mm-hmm. So some kind of thinking out of box.
Yeah, for no good reason as well.
What would be the most creative team you've worked with?
How do you define the most creative?
Like you say, like, well, that was definitely I'm not sure you could make it an adjective, but the creativest, the most creative project or type of collaboration, or the way people interacted with each other.
I'm struggling a little bit with precise example of that. I know what I'm sort of looking for. I think to me that would be something where we set out to do to solve a particular problem, but then in the process of solving that problem, we kind of redefine it in a way that allowed to find even better solution to even better problem. So sort of kind of taking a step or maybe more than one step back and kind of finding something better to do, something like this.
One day you can become a politician. It's like answering a question without answering the question, but
right,
people are satisfied. Like, all right, yeah, it makes sense.
I fully recognize that I should give a specific example, but I struggle to remember kind of I remember having feeling of something like this happening, but I'm struggling to remember precise example. And I think that also the way you posed the question, it kind of prompts me to think about something kind of big, not something where I think one of those things, but it was not huge, but I think it was very creative moment in a sense when we at Rollup we were presenting our product and at the conference called Demo, which was maybe it still is a relatively high scale kind of startup presentation kind of conference, and we were working on a script to do that. And when we had idea on how we go about this, and then we started working on it, and we saw that now it's kind of not flying, and then we kind of throw stuff upside down, and it went really well in the end. So that was that kind of creative moment, but it was not something huge or earth shattering.
I never mentioned huge. Sense. Like, because I think that our points events were quite creative, and that was
there you go.
One kind of collaboration where we had to consider your creative vision and analysis and the way I see it and approach it and put it together and make it happen. Then TEDx event where you were a speaker, Pichakcha nights, and this kind of, at least for me as a speaker trainer, it was a co-creation of presentations and the content line. Very different people.
Yep. It's great examples.
So we can actually move to one of my first questions. It is, given a group of people who are visionaries, like who know the way things should be and have their attitude and opinion about something,
right,
and trying to shape out of these individual opinions something collaborative, something joint. how? That's a very complex question, I know, but
I think I expected this question maybe because something along those lines is written in the notes. And I think what I would have to say, the way I see it, there are sort of three ways how the situation can develop. I think two major ways would be like we have a group of people, hopefully maybe already a team or something along those lines. And when I say we, I mean like the group itself, like as if I'm part of the group. We look and understand strengths and maybe weaknesses of group's members, and then we try to find a problem to be solved or kind of thing to be done, project to be embarked on that can be uniquely served by the set of strength that we have in the group. So we start with the group, with the team, with the assembly that we have, and we shape the problem that we are working on. That's one major possibility that I see. Another major possibility would be, we have someone, maybe kind of leader of the group or whatever, they have a super bright idea, they feel really passionate about it, and they want to for this idea to come true, to start existing in this world. And then they sort of think through and start assembling the team which would be uniquely suited to building that particular idea. So we start with idea and then we shape the team to work on that idea. That there would be the second way of going about it. And the third way of going about it would be something in between, where we shape both kind of things and where we probably are least certain than anything good would come out of that activity, because that would involve a certain element of luck for stars aligning and kind of idea and the team clicking and something happening. Does it make any sense?
Yeah. I think in most cases it's this third scenario with a mixed, when you already have a partner or a group of people, and then you get more collaborators when you see that you're missing something. At least this is how it went with L&D Mastery course. We did have 2 trainers on board from the very beginning, and we had to get 4 more, knowing what kind of expertise we missed.
That's fine.
I was retrospectively looking at things that went okay and things that didn't go okay in the process of creation of this course. And my formula of how to manage is MMFD, which stands for motivation, like spending lots of time understanding why people are getting into this team before they actually get there. With some trainers who spend months discussing like whether they should join, should not join, in what role, and how to do that. Then meetings, like lots of meetings, because this is a creative process and you can do a bunch of things asynchronously, but then you have to bring it all together and discuss it in this shared context. And the more the better, the more frequently the better, especially at the early stages. Then this freedom of MMF is freedom, and freedom means giving up the plan, because I had my vision of the course and I gave it up like week 2 in the production, because these people were smarter than me. Like when they started suggesting things, I could sacrifice pretty much anything, the architecture, the killer features, things that I wanted to implement the most, because I think that given this kind of freedom, you also share the responsibility. And when people feel that they're responsible for the final product, they're more engaged and they just take it more seriously than if they feel that they have to do like this section or segment of a task. And the last one is probably the most painful, is a deadline. Like you should limit this time, like 2 months. This is the time we have to collaborate, to discuss, to review, and then we have to present a draft of the course and move on.
I sort of expect maybe that for you would go for disciplined, but deadlines is another side of it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me.
At least this is things that work, because there was a number that didn't.
Mm-hmm.
We'll discuss them later.
Would be curious to learn about things that didn't work, because like in a sense, I think that those are things that give the most learnings, right? Because it kind of two things. Like if you try something that would be something that kind of comes natural for the situation, and there is a chance that others would try to do the same thing. But then if this thing didn't work, it would be very useful to know why. I have a question about the second M. When you said meetings, I wonder, how did it go? Were those online Zoom meetings, or were they real live meetings? And did you notice, if they were both, did you notice any difference between the two?
I did use offline meetings to sell the idea to the initial people who joined the team. Like, we discussed it offline to make sure we're on the same page. And it was a longer discussion because, well, how long can you survive in Zoom? Like 90 minutes, 2 hours tops. And then that is just getting unbearable. During the dinner, you can spend 4 hours sharing context, stories, taking a walk, describing all the risks and the possibilities. So during the first month of planning, I did talk to a number of people offline. They were both partners, potential partners, and potential trainers. And I think offline did work quite well. But then, like 95% of all other meetings happened in Zoom because of geography.
Interesting. Okay. I would also expect, of course, if it was kind of logistical possibility to have a number of working sessions to also happen kind of offline or in real life. I'm not sure how where we draw the line between online and offline.
I wish, but a trainer in Portugal, a trainer in Latvia, and a few in Ukraine. Some people can get out, some people can get in.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it makes a lot of sense these days.
The reality of lives. Actually, I think we could go into things that potentially could go wrong if you were mentoring a person who is about to start such an initiative and get a lot of people who are competent and creative and co-create something, a startup or a brand new feature or something that is done by Stretch. What would be like 3 biggest risks or potential mistakes one could make?
I think what I would say there would be, one is like one way or the other in something like this, there would be a person who is a kind of a nuclei of this whole activity, kind of the starter, the leader. And I think for them, I've been there myself, it would be a mistake to kind of make up a plan and then try to precisely follow it. I think that's I think what you said that you did. You started with the plan and with the vision, which I think is a super useful initially, kind of as a starting point for everyone, so that they are not kind of all over the place, but they start in a particular point. But then very quickly giving up the idea that everything will go according to that plan, or even maybe the idea that we will produce precisely what we envisioned, and instead kind of trying to leverage and, for the lack of a better word, exploit the strength and unique kind of knowledge and capabilities of people who are joining the team. So not being flexible and kind of following one's ego, I think, would be a big mistake. It's difficult not to do that, especially when you do that for the first time. But that would be one. Another one I think could be that sometimes kind of meandering and brainstorming or kind of even moving in one direction, the team can sort of go into a sort of dead end, and it might be useful to also be open-minded and allow to take one step or maybe several step backs and throw out the work that has already been done for the benefit of pursuing a different avenue that might be more productive. And I think with individual projects that might be kind of easier to push through when you're stuck in a dead end. With multiple people, it is more difficult because the sunken cost fallacy really kicks in in different ways for different participants. I think that's what comes to mind in
3 mistakes I made. So this is a very practical thing. I over-managed the meetings. Like when you have an agenda of 5 items and people deep dive in one section because it's important and everything depends on the thing that we are discussing. So, but I understand the value of the other 4 things that we have to discuss. And I kind of pushed these discussions to cover all the issues that we put into the agenda, because just we have this 1 hour a week to get everything discussed and done. And then there will be time to collaborate and discuss and have these conversations. But I think it was my mistake to be being too strict and not letting things happen there. Or at least I didn't anticipate this risk and didn't get extra time like for any other business that I could dedicate to such discussions, because I think they're important for early stages during the vision creation or co-creation, and trying to fit in organizational issues, technological issues, creative issues into a single conversation was a mistake. And I think this is where luckily we did manage to still come up with the course, but I think it could have been much easier if I planned accordingly.
That's interesting. If I may, I have two questions about this. First, I kind of it resonates with me very much. I think I likely would be in a similar position, kind of operating from the point of efficiency, kind of a thing, right? Like, yeah, we know what we need to do this. Like, let's go ahead and do this and discuss items and so on. The questions I would have were, first, how did you notice that this is a problem, and like what were the signals or symptoms that you observed that made you kind of reconsider the approach? And like the second one would be, how did you do that? Like what did you do differently now that you've noticed this problem?
Back from my teaching experience, there was a term TTT, teacher talking time, and I realized that I talked too much during the call. I could spend 30 to 40% of the time trying to guide, direct, answer the questions, move it somewhere, rephrasing, refuting, doing some other sort of things. And it should be way lower. Like having a call with 7 people, I should have not more than 15%, maybe fewer than that. And the other thing is the number of questions that were not clear about the concept. Like there were questions popping up about, let's say, the case. Like we wanted to have this case that would go through all the course, through all the modules, and people would have to take different parts of this case and use it at different stages of their thing. And it was not clear until like the very last week how it's going to work. And that's the lack of the discussion, in-depth discussion that had to happen during the meetings. But probably I just didn't plan this discussion accordingly, and it didn't happen.
And what have you started doing differently then? Just you replanned, or you gave up and allowed the meetings just to flow where they
Fortunately for me, the trainers of the course are very competent people who just self-organized and they started doing it one-on-one, and they discussed the transitions between each other. So they were meeting and arranging Zooms to discuss how things would go from one person to the other. And they never wrote any follow-ups though, but I knew it was happening. So, and this is how they figured it out without my help. So I just didn't help at all, and it was not me who fixed this issue.
But it still sounds like somehow more collaboration time was created to work out all of
there was a need
challenges.
that I didn't register in time, and people fulfilled this need by their means that they had.
Oh, that's cool. It's great to have such people.
The second mistake was not creating the convenient and the proper space for collaboration. We tried using Google Docs, we tried using chats, we tried using Notion at different stages, and I never spent enough time explaining and showing how it works and introducing these things. And for creative kind of things, when, let's say, I would like to see all the module goals, all the deliverables, all the materials people are going to use, or methods or tools or something, it should work for most people. It should be user-friendly. It should be easy and understandable. And I didn't design it in the proper way. Like, I started using this Google Sheet thing where I tried to edit everything and fill everything, but it didn't work. So I asked once, then I asked twice, then I asked 3 times to fill it in. It didn't work. And that was the signal where I should have thought, maybe we should design something better, something more explicit and clear and friendly. I didn't. And only by the last weeks, when we started creating Notion for the students, for the learners, I did make Notion space for the trainers. And it was a relief, because people now had their own space where they could put all their ideas, see how other people are doing that. And it was transparent. It wasn't living on somebody's Google Drive, or you had to remember the link. It was always pinned in the chat, and it was one place to go to see everything that is happening. And I believe this is highly important, and I kind of neglected it for a while.
Yeah, this is very important indeed. And I want to ask you a question here. Was there something where what you sort of needed to do as a kind of leader or facilitator of this group, or the driver, the pusher for this group? Was this thing kind of in conflict maybe a little bit with you also wanting to wear that co-creator hat to participate in actually creating that stuff? Because organizing the space and stuff like that, that's kind of meta work, right? That's work on team cohesion. That's not work on the tangible product that the team produces. Do you feel like that there was a little bit of a kind of conflict or tension between those things, which led to this maybe oversight?
I don't think that was the case in this specific team. I definitely could have done it in some others, but here specifically, I think I just underestimated how much effort it would take to do what I want. Like, when I ask people just fill in the table, it's actually more difficult because the table is not user-friendly. Some people wrote paragraphs of text there. Some people wrote just bullets. There was no example, no structure, no style. And then I just spent hours trying to edit it and make it look somehow readable for our partners who were doing the marketing and sales part. And I think that I just didn't estimate the importance correctly. Like, I haven't thought about it. I thought, what's the easiest way to do it? Google Sheet. Let's go.
Interesting. Yeah, so the reason why I asked is I noticed that sometimes I myself can be ever so slightly biased towards kind of actual kind of product or project work rather than what would be necessary or important or valuable in terms of organizing, and sometimes do those things later than I should have done them. And the reason I came up for why that happens with myself is that I kind of like the product, the actual work as well, and sometimes I give priority to that one.
In my case, I would definitely like to be just a learner in this course. I don't even want to be a trainer. I will gladly just watch all the videos and go through all the materials that people are going through, because
Nice.
I think that this learning experience is just something. So if you let me not do the managerial work and just buy the course, that's what I would do.
That would be much better. Good one. And that was the third thing, right? You wanted to.
The third mistake is the lack of regular one-on-one meetings with people. I kind of thought that our group calls, they cover most of the things, and people who knew me well, they could just call me or text me and ask for help. But then I realized that more people need help and more people want to talk things through and maybe vent sometimes. And this sort of creativity requires a lot of discussion and talking out loud. And once again, our partners, People First Club, they provided a course producer, Marta, who was partially filling in these things. She was talking to the trainers as well and helping me out a lot here. Right. But this is now I realize that this is important. And I think if I were back in summer, I would definitely consider more time for this. Maybe even some of them should be like placeholders in the calendar. This is the practice I've been doing lately. Like, if you need my time, this is when you can definitely get it.
Office hours.
Then just click yes or no if you don't need it, and you're free to choose. It's not an obligatory meeting, but I'm available for you here and here and here.
Oh, that's interesting. I also have two things about this. First is it sounds like this is a little bit connected to this idea of space that we just discussed, kind of creating space for people to do that other kind of work-related activity in an easy way. And I agree with you that generally, we would underestimate how difficult that is sometimes for people just to reach out because of sometimes sort of silly reasons. And I know that myself, that I could benefit from talking to someone, but then I would hesitate, is now a good time for me to talk to them? Would I be distracting them, or should I do a little bit more prep and thinking on my side and stuff like that? But if there is a time that's already set up, this space that's already created, you just go in and you get the answers you need, or the inputs that are helpful, or you just vent and use the other person as a rubber duck to debug your problem and sharpen your thinking. It's good, cool stuff.
Well, since we're here, I think we could jump to a set of questions about group dynamics, because I think that for such teams or groups, it's usually one of two things. It's either hard to engage people and get them believe in things and care about not just their piece of work, but the entire project. Especially every trainer on this course could be doing different modules and maybe even the entire course, but they were doing a specific segment here. But they were very helpful to each other, contributing to what could be here, what should be about strategy, what about analytics, what about technology, what about this and that. And they were even helping me in this meta preparation of learning experience, setting up Notion, Slack, and other kind of things.
Right.
And I can see two potential issues here. One is that when people just focus on their piece of work and they don't get engaged in the whole process of co-creation, or they get engaged too much and it causes conflicts, tensions, and issues when people don't feel where is the responsibility of this person and where is my responsibility here, because these roles are usually not super clear.
It's one of the two. Yep.
So let's say we have this first scenario, a team of people who are just doing what they should, but do not get engaged in the process overall, or don't solve the issue. They just work on a segment. What would be the way to engage them or show that the word empower is probably the best here?
I don't know precisely. I think the analogy, the thinking that I think I'd be following in this case, and maybe in both cases, in both of the extremes that you mentioned, is to kind of shake up things. So if you have, I don't know, like how to describe this analogy, right? If you have pile of something and it, you know that it should fit in this bucket, but it doesn't. Kind of the best way to make it fit is like to shake it up. Then kind of the pieces and the gravel and stuff, they kind of somehow realign itself with the neighbors to occupy more space and stuff like that. So this is how I'm kind of thinking about those situations. And when people do not engage as much, I maybe would, try to maybe think of something to stir them up, or maybe do, I don't know, like collective review session where each, like force in good terms to everyone to present what they have or the problem that they're thinking, and walk the team through and ask for feedback and kind of maybe start things going that way. Or maybe naturally would be, as you said, empower. If I notice that someone is doing what would be desired in this situation, to kind of start to do something to amplify that, to highlight, like, yeah, that was a great thing that happened here. Kind of do more of that, but send that signal somehow less directly, not so that that's not an order or not a specific or direct ask, but just rather like it would, like, you see, it's great, like to do more of that. Think of how this can work in your area or something along those lines.
My points are very similar. I just named them differently. The first one was gratitude. Like whenever something happens and people do get engaged, just highlighting to everyone, like, thank you, Bob, for helping me here. That was really great. It helped me do this, and that. Great idea. The second thing is asking for help. I think that people do not cross some borders, or they respect the boundaries, even where these boundaries do not exist. And when you invite them in, saying like, guys, this is our space for co-creation here, and we need fresh solutions. Like, I don't know what Notion for learners should look like. If you have any thoughts, please share with me. And sometimes if people do not react, maybe arranging something more formal, like a brainstorming session, where people get a specific question, they know that they should contribute to solving this issue, and then it's just easier than, like, I don't know, sending something in the chat and hoping that people will read it and get motivated to think about it.
But on this one, would it be fair to say that what was that model? What's the scientific name of the model for forming, storming, norming, performing?
There is no scientific name for this thing.
Okay,
it's a marketing term.
So for this model, it's kind of, it sort of sounds like a even a prerequisite for team or group to go through this storming phase in order to get to the next level of performing. And if everyone is sort of closed and is afraid of maybe or feels uncomfortable of potentially crossing the invisible boundaries, and kind of storming does not happen, maybe useful to induce a little bit of storming to kind of figure out where everyone stands and how to move forward.
I'm not really good at managing this sort of dynamics. That's why I prefer not to do this sort of things. It was one of the latest requests when people asked to provoke people think differently and share some difficult emotions during the meeting. I said, that's not for me. If you know how to do it, please do it yourself. I just can't take the full responsibility for getting people recovered after this. And that's why I'm not going to provoke such things. It's like this, educational. I think it was Tony Robbins event that we were discussing about people crying and going through some kind of transformations. I'm definitely not the guy who would arrange any kind of activity that could provoke people.
Right. So you would not go for developers motivational meltdown like Steve Ballmer did one day?
Nope. No, not my cup of tea. Since you started speaking about storming, let's imagine this second scenario where people are just eager and they discuss not just their part of activities, but everybody's else. And it's kind of hard to agree because, 6 different opinions on the same issue could go very different directions.
Then I think we need to do something opposite what you discussed. And once again, I don't know. One thing could be to maybe approach this from a little bit of a more formalistic angle, and if we agree that for each of the areas we have one quote-unquote responsible person, and they have the final vote on how this thing is developing, it might be a way towards a kind of a better sort of model where they would drive the discussion. They would still invite and maybe even solicit feedback or suggestions from other participants, but it will be a little bit more orderly where everyone would hopefully know and understand that yes, their opinion will be heard, and if it has, not necessarily if it has merit, but it may be incorporated, and if it's not incorporated, that's not because the opinion is bad, but maybe because of other good reasons, and we kind of trust that person to make those determinations. And kind of, I feel like we may start formally, but to me that would be kind of a starting point to evolve this model, and it will end up something more fuzzy in the end. But then I guess that's about it. Nothing comes to my head there. What did you do? Did it happen in your project, and what did you do?
Not in this one, but it did happen in another project that I manage. And there was a solution that was suggested by one of the team members that I loved. We created the Notion space with people filling in questions, how to give me feedback, and what should you know about working with me. And people just wrote their texts there. And if you would like to come to me as whatever my role in the team is and suggest something, please read this profile before you do.
It's like user's manual kind of thing.
But it does help because we are so different. And how to give me corrective feedback. I prefer data-driven feedback. show me the screenshots, tell me the facts, show me the impact, and I will definitely fix something. Come with just an idea of correction without data, I will probably dismiss it. And when people know it before they come, they can prepare. If they prefer sandwich feedback, like don't come with corrective feedback to me at all, ever. Like at first tell me 3 good things and then give me advice, not criticism, but advice, and explain why it's important. That should work. And people know about themselves much more than you could imagine if they just remember, if they reflect on this. So filling in these questions in Notion was like highly helpful. We also added questions about usual response time, like how actively do you usually answer messages, what's the emergency channel to contact you if we need an answer now, like what's the best way to get in touch, and all the things. They kind of relieved a lot of tension that was in the team.
Good stuff.
So I think there is one more question that I would definitely like to tackle.
Sure.
It's the group dynamics in the length, because quite often when you kickstart the project, the motivation is high. There's a lot of creativity happening and people discuss everything. But then as the project unfolds and develops, the level of creativity is dropping. You have to do a lot of admin stuff. You have to actually perform rather than create, and do some routine work to make things happen. And the dynamics might go down. Probably there should be some tools to keep people engaged even in this later stage of the project, because it's still creative work. It's just different kind of creative. And one thing is brainstorming 1 million ideas and then selecting 10 and actually scheduling time and making them happen is what makes all the difference. What basically means a successful collaboration. So what would you suggest if you know that there is such a risk that the motivation will most likely drop in the later stages?
I think I would have maybe 2 things to offer. One would be stealing from what you just described. I think given that we know that we can anticipate this sort of dynamics going on, and the people we work with are professionals, seasoned professionals, they would also have gone through a number of projects where they may have experienced similar thing. We can probably go up and ask them, like, folks, we anticipate this obstacle down the road. How do you think we can work around it? Maybe there would be some good ideas. The idea I would offer if I'm asked that question would be to kind of intermingle main line of work with some sort of side quest and to keep creative juices flowing, sort of a thing. So I would imagine that at some point for this course or for something along those lines, like marketing materials would need to be created, and marketing materials of different kind, and it can be a good kind of side activity for the team to engage in, kind of maybe brainstorming or something like that on that matter, or something else that would also need to be done, kind of get them distracted a little bit from the routine of day-to-day operational work on the project, and give them kind of maybe fresh eye for when they get back to their work that may seem more boring now or less interesting than it was in the actual kind of design creative phase.
That makes a lot of sense.
And how did it unfold on this project for you?
It's happening right now because like we are in the middle of the integration stage. Like the students are learning, the trainers are training right now, and things that I think kind of work is very transparent communication. Like we share feedback from learners, for instance. And these things, they do get you engaged because it's not an abstract thing anymore. It's real people. Here they are. They're in Slack. You can see their communication. You can read their tasks. You can see in Notion their tasks moving from in progress to done sections and checked sections, and all the thing is happening. But what we could do, we could highlight them for the trainers team.
Right.
And bring from the meetings, from the Zoom calls into the chat and ping and say, like, guys, this is what happened. This is what's the dynamics. This is because there are people behind this solution, and getting aligned with these people probably is one of the strongest motivators, especially for educators, because they create these things for live people. And then the second thing is probably the procrastination, because for highly creative and complicated things, people tend to procrastinate, especially the difficult tasks. And surprisingly, the difficulty could be very different for different people. Let's say you have to make a video.
Right.
Pre-recorded video to explain a concept.
Right.
Reasons for procrastination could be so different for just these specific tasks. Like, I don't know the structure. I don't like the technical side. I'm not sure about the content I'm doing. And like, there are so many things that could go wrong here. So when things are not done in time, suggesting some kind of help or figuring out what doesn't work. Usually it's a conversation, like whenever there is a way to talk things through. And this is again where Marta is helping me out a lot. When she sees that something is not done within the timeline of preparation, she jumps in and like she talks to people. And then one of the greatest things that was like an insight for me during this course is that it's actually a great idea to get people volunteering or working or hired to do the job that you don't like or you don't have energy to do. It's actually okay not to do things by yourself. You can delegate it in so many ways. For instance, we needed some information about budgeting and strategies in different companies. And one of our trainers just engaged another person from L&D community, and together they run a number of interviews with different L&D managers and leads. And it worked. Like you basically, there is always a person somewhere in the next Zoom or in the next chat who could potentially help. But asking for this help, reaching out for this help, or offering this help, I think is one of the greatest tools that we don't use quite often enough.
Oh, that's a great one. That's a great one. I like this a lot because I know for myself as well that there would be things that I know need to be done, but I'm not super fond of doing them myself, and that can be kind of a roadblock for moving forward. Both on it may be like a literal roadblock for the line of work, or it can be roadblock where I know that hey, this just needs to be done, and until I'm done with this, I don't feel like I'm free to move to the next other thing that's not even related to the something like getting someone to help is great, and offering help is also helpful. You know, there is one more thing that I thought of in this regard for creative projects. I think one of the other things that can contribute to motivation hype kind of falling off, especially after the initial brainstorming stage and something like that, could be that stuff when we brainstorm and generate ideas, we can generate so much, and so many of those things can actually be good ideas. And at some point, when that thing kind of collides with the realities on the ground, like the time is limited, the budget is limited, there are constraints of the real world, some of us might start realizing that, oh, this thing would not be as good as I imagined, and this can contribute to the motivation drop. And I think it's similar to how you started presenting the feedback from participants and stuff like that. I think the way to deal with that is to kind of start getting real faster, instead of kind of fantasizing about like generating one more great idea. Instead, celebrate, oh, we've got this piece working, it's like it's here, it's real, it's tangible, and celebrate those things to kind of compensate for maybe a little bit of a negative side happening on, this is a great idea, but we probably would not have time to implement or pursue it.
Mm-hmm. Well, summing it up, I would like to ask you a meta question. If you were to run a creative project, would you prefer it, this manageable hierarchical style with functions and roles, or decentralized, collaborative, co-creative kind of thing? Let's say another podcast, just to make it more specific, because I know that it's a very generic question.
I don't know. I feel like with decentralized style, decentralized, distributed, whatever it means, there is a somewhat greater potential for something unexpected and great to happen, and kind of be great precisely because it's unexpected, kind of a thing. But at the same time, I realize that it might be more challenging, it's more risky, and it is most likely going to take more time otherwise, and it can lead to demotivation, where at some point the kind of maybe this thing is somewhat below of what it could be. What if you had something in mind? It's really challenging, at least for me, to get through that time, and it's going to take longer for that unexpected greatness to happen. And this would be the time where I would be thinking, I'd better done it the old traditional way, just with having people do what I say, or what someone else who's knowledgeable in the matter is saying. So I guess if we're really time constrained and something like that, or it was super critical to get something out, I maybe would opt out for like hierarchical thing, for the speed of how this thing could be produced, with the idea of then iteratively improving it with hopefully more distributed, decentralized fashion. But if I feel like we have enough time and kind of budget or resources to go full swing, maybe I'll give it a go with decentralized stuff, bearing in mind all the challenges that we just discussed in the past hour.
I would definitely consider my own energy as well, because getting into such kind of collaboration is energy consuming for an introverted person like me. Like, I do have to recharge and refill, and right now I feel I'm at the maximum of decentralized work, like L&D community, these course, like that's it. Like I can't get fit in anything else. Everything else should be managed and organized and disciplined. But I really like the idea that you mentioned here about, I wrote it down as the risk of something great happening. And this something is way greater than I could imagine it in the very beginning. Like, looking at this course as an idea that I had a few years ago, and what I can see right now happening, I couldn't make it as effective and smooth as it is. Of course, there's a way to improve it. By the second iteration, we'll run the retro and upgrade a lot of things, but this thing hasn't existed, and it is here now. From the very first weeks, we got like half of the group filled because people were so thrilled and excited that this thing appeared on the market. And I think it's going to be transformative. Like, this thing is going to change corporate education in Ukrainian tech companies, because people will have confidence, skills, and community to collaborate with. And I hope that it will have long-running impact afterwards. It's not just, this set of lectures or books that people read and watch and they don't change things. I think this is going to be a game changer, and it's possible just because of this co-creation. I can't really imagine a person or even 2 people or 3 people doing it by themselves. So co-creation does pay off, and I'm really excited and grateful for all people who helped and support here.
That sounds great. And you know what? What else would be game changing is if you give our listeners a link or something to partake in this greatness and learn for themselves, where they can join this course, where they can learn from it, and all the good things that you've just described.
Currently, there is just a Ukrainian page. I believe that one day we'll also migrate it to English, but for now, we'll just get it to the show notes. Translators will do. I think you'll get the grasp what it is and what it is like.
So you don't have something like good sounding like something.com for this one?
It's on the People First Club, but I think it's /LED Mastery /something. So we'll definitely work it out by the next season. Let's put it in the to-do list.
Right. So then people would have to go to biweeklycast.com, then find the 30th episode of this podcast. And in the show notes, the very first link that will be there would be the link to this wonderful L&D mastery course created by Savvy and co-creators. Or by Slava and co-creators. I don't know, like what would
mostly
be
by co-creators
and Slava.
Yep.
Okay. It would be a nice name for a rock band or something like that.
Co-creators and without a name, just co-creators and someone.
And someone.
Well, I guess we could call it a day then.
Or maybe a week.
Hopefully a good one.
Good one. Good week.
Good week.